Hey, my name is Vignesh Senthil Kumar, and I'm going to be doing the math lectures. This is lecture number 1. It's going to be covering the overview of the math section and the basics of it. And we're also going to do a couple of the math section questions, as you can tell from what's on the screen. So, first off, when we say math section, we're talking about sections 3 and 4 of the SAT. Section 3 is the math no calculator section. It gives you 25 minutes. And section 4 is the math calculator section, and it gives you 55 minutes. And as you can tell from the names, the biggest difference between the two sections is that section 4 lets you use a calculator and is longer. And so the questions are a little bit different for section 4 because it lets you use a calculator. So it's a little bit more data driven. So one thing you should note about the math section is that as you progress through the exam, the questions get harder. So for example, question 1 is much easier than question 15. Or at least that's how it typically is. Obviously, there's always a little bit some exceptions to the rule, but typically what you can think of is that as you progress, it gets harder. Also, one reason why the math section has become kind of infamous recently, that the math curves have been really bad recently. So what that means is usually like in like a couple of years earlier, if you missed one question or two questions, you get like around 800. It's like 780 to 800. However, recently they made the test easier, but what that caused is it caused the curve to get much worse. So like for example, in my test, I missed one question on the math section, and that led for me to lose 30 points in that section. So as you can see, any silly mistakes you may make in the math section can have a huge impact now than it may have made in like a couple of years earlier. So also what you should know about the math section is in each section, there are written questions at the very end of the section. These are like fill in the blank questions basically, and they're different from the normal multiple choice questions you may have. Also, another thing you should know is that they don't check your work in the math section because it's bubbled in. Like, everything is bubbled in. Even the grid is like there's a way you bubble it in. So when they grade your test, they just check if you have the right answer. So even if like you guess for an answer but you get it right, you still get the points. So that means you should never skip. You should never just skip a question. Always guess. And also, if if you have another way to do a question, like an easier method, which there are many tips and tricks because it is a multiple choice exam, you can do those and you won't have to fear, oh, you're not showing enough work. So that's what later on, like the later episodes of these lectures, we're gonna cover how these tips and tricks work and like these individual tips and tricks for each question types, because a lot of the question types are similar across multiple tests. So, but for now, let's go over a couple practice questions from each section. This is from practice test 1 on the College Board website, and I basically did the last couple questions from each section because, like I said before, these are the hard questions. Also, these notes, like what I said before, like it is in notes section, and these practice problems are posted on Google Classroom, so you guys can refer to them. And I also recommend that as I switch to each page, you guys pause the video and then you guys do the questions yourself, or you can look on the Google Classroom and do the questions yourself, and then come back to the video. And if you need help, I can explain it to you, or I can show a faster way to do a question. So let's get started. So this is section 3, and we're on number 13 right now. So if x is greater than 3, which of the following is equivalent to 1 over x plus 2 plus 1 over x plus 3? So the first thing you should do is when you see something like this where it's like 1 over x plus 2 and 1 over x plus 3, you should try to remove like this fraction. So the easiest way you can do this is you multiply the top and bottom. Because if you remember, if you multiply a fraction by you multiply a fraction by the same thing on the top and the bottom, it's the same fraction, it's an equivalent fraction. So you should multiply this by x plus 2, x plus 3 over x plus 2 times x plus 3. This will simplify the fraction for you, and if you do this, the answer you would get is x plus 2 x plus times x plus 3 over x plus 2 plus x plus 3. So now that you have this, if you did FOIL method, you would and then you added these in the bottom, you would get x squared plus 5x plus 6 over 2x plus 5, which is the same as answer choice B. Also, alternatively, if it doesn't line up properly and you still have trouble, what you can also do is you can plug in a number for value for x. So it says if x is greater than 3, right? So what you can do is you can do like plug in 4, and you plug in x equals 4 for this one, for the original equation, and for each of the answer choices, and you see for which ones is the answer the same. And if you have multiple answers where the answer is the same, then you do a different number, and eventually you'll get the right answer of B. So in this question, it was easy to just do it algebraically, but if you need to, you can use that substitution. So number 14, if 3x minus y equals 12, what is the value of 8x over 2y? In my opinion, the easiest way to do this is substitution. So what I want to do is I want to find a value for x and a value for y that would make this equation true. And I want the simplest values. So doing this, what I found what simplest values were is x equals 4 and y equals 0. Because 3 times 4 equals 12, minus 0 is 12. And if you can, you would want to make one of the variables equal to 0, because that just makes your life easier. So now what we can do is we plug in the 4 and the 0 into this equation. That will give us 8 to the 4th power over 2 to the 0 power. And anything to the 0 power is just 1. So this just equals 8 over 4 over 1, which is equal to 8 over 4. Now, none of these answer choices are 8 to the 4th power. So what should you do now? Now what you can do is that 8 can also be made into an exponent. So if you guys remember, 2 to the 3rd power is equal to 8. So you can make this equal to 2 to the 3rd power to the 4th power. And if you have something like this, to simplify this, you just multiply these two numbers. So this would give you 2 to the 12th power, which is answer choice A. Now number 15. This is the last of the multiple choice questions. So this is one of the harder questions. So if ax plus 2 times bx plus 7 equals 15x squared plus cx plus 14 for all values of x, and a plus b equals 8, what are two possible values for c? So what I first want to do is I want to FOIL this first equation. So if I do this, this would give me abx squared plus 2bx plus 7ax plus 14, and this is equal to this equation. So what I know from this is that I can draw similar, I can like make equations out of this. So right now I know AB has to equal 15. So AB equals 15. And I know 2B plus 7A has to equal C. So 2B, my bad. Let me just fix that. So 2B plus 7A equals C. And I also got another equation right here. A plus B equals 8. So A plus B equals 8. So first I want to solve for A and B. So right now I need two numbers that add up to 8 and two numbers that, and I also multiply to 15. And if you see the two possible values for C, that's because that it depends on which one you say is B and which one you say is A. So in this case, two numbers, let me just erase this side. So two numbers that add up to 8 and that multiply to 15 are 3 and 5. So that means that that means you can say A equals 3, B equals 5, or A equals 5, B equals 3. So you can do either one, because if you see all the answer choices are different, so you can just do one of them, and I'm just gonna do this one. So now I'm gonna plug this back into this equation to solve for C. So this means 2 times 5 plus 7 times 3 equals C. That gives me 10 plus 21 equals C. C equals 31. And there's also another value for C if you did A equals 5, B plus equals 3. However, the only answer choice that has C equals to 31 is D. So answer choice D is correct here. Now let's go into some of the good questions for section 3. Number 16. If t is greater than 0 and t squared minus 4 equals 0, what is the value of t? Well, here what you can just do is just do t squared minus 4 equals 0. T squared equals 4. I just added 4 to both sides and square root both sides. T equals plus or minus 2. But since I know t has to be greater than 0, it has to be plus 2. So the answer is 2. Now let's do number 17. So a summer camp counselor wants to find the length x, that's this one right here, in feet across the lake as represented in the sketch above. The lengths represented by AB, EB, BD, and CD on the sketch were determined to be 1,800 feet, 1,400 feet, 700 feet, 800 feet respectively. Segments AC and DE intercept at B, and angle AEB and CDB have the same measure, and that they already marked that here by this one angle sign right on both sides to show that they're congruent angles. What is the value of x? So we're trying to solve for this side, right? But let's plug in the information we already know. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed already, but you write on your test booklet, so you can write on your test, which is very helpful for like diagrams like this. So first AB, that is 1,800 feet. Okay, then I'm not going to write feet anymore. I'm just going to write the number. And then EB is 1,400 feet. Next, BD is 700 feet. And finally, CD is 800 feet. Okay. One important thing you should know is that since these two both intersect at point B, these angles are actually congruent angles, which means they have the same measure. And since both these triangles have two angles that are the same measure, that means the third angle is also the same measure, because all angles have to add up. I mean, all angles in a triangle have to add up to 180 degrees. So right now we have two triangles that have all the same angles. That means that these two, but they have different sizes of sides. That means that these two triangles are similar triangles, which means that the side lengths are proportional to each other. So what does, so we should, now we need to see which side length to the larger triangle correlates to the side length for the smaller triangle. So the easiest way to do this is to just keep track of your how many of like these, I don't know how to call this, like these angle measures markings you have so like, let me say how, so right here, DB, that's one angle marking to two angle markings. Where do you see it on this bigger triangle? You see it right here, EB, one angle marking to two angle markings. So this is what the SAT is trying to trick you, because they want you to think that this side is the one that AB is what correlates to BD. However, if you do the angle markings trick I taught you, that way you don't get confused. So we know that these two sides coordinate to each other. So we also, using the same trick, one angle marking to two angle markings, we know this DC correlates with AE, which is what we're trying to find for. So we can just do a simple proportion equation. So we can do, so we do 1,400 over 700 equals to x, which is AE, over 800. And 1,400 over 700 is a 2-to-1 ratio, which means x has to be 2 times 800, which is 1,600. And that's kind of an inside joke, because I know all of you want to get a 1,600. Okay, now number 18. According to the system of equations above, what is the value of x? This is, again, is a pretty simple algebra question. But the easiest way to do this, in my opinion, is x plus 2y equals negative 25, and x plus y equals negative 9. You can solve for x here by like multiplying the second equation by 2 and just subtracting that way. However, I just find it easier if I just solve for y and then solve for x later on by plugging the equation, because I feel like it leaves less chance of error for me. However, if you want to be as fast as possible, you would just solve for x this way. But I'm just going to solve for y for now, because it's easier to just cross off the x right this way. Subtract both equations, you get y equals negative 16. So if y equals negative 16, x plus negative 16 equals negative 9. That you know x equals 7. Now number 19. In a right triangle, one angle measures x degrees, where sine x equals 4/5. What is cosine 90 degrees minus x? So something that you guys should always know, it is always true. Sine x is always equal to cosine 90 degrees minus x. And it's the same thing for cosine x equals sine 90 degrees minus x, because this is the sine and the cosine of two complementary angles are equal to each other. So what we know is this is equal to this, so that means cosine 90 degrees minus x is equal to 4/5. And this same like theorem, I guess you could call it, was used in the practice test, the practices that you guys hopefully took on Saturday. So it just shows that this is a recurring thing that you should just know, like about trig. Now number 20. If a equals 5√2 and 2a equals √2x, what is the value of x? So so let's just sub this. So we know a is 5√2, so that means 2a would just be 10√2, and that is equal to √2 times the square root of 2x. So now what we do is let's square both sides to get rid of the square root. That gives us, so you square the 10 and you keep the 2 and you just make it that to 2. So that would be 100 times 2 equals 2x. So here just divide both sides by 2 and you get x is equal to 100. And one thing you should know about the grid questions, like I just remembered, is that the grid question, there's no negative sign in the grid. So that means, so you know for a fact that your answer has to be a positive number. So if you get a negative number anywhere along the way, just know you did something wrong and you gotta go fix it. Now let's go to section number 4 and do some of the hard questions in that one. This again is the calculator section. I'm using a scientific calculator, but again, it would be helpful if you could use a graphing calculator for some of these, but you don't need a graphing calculator. So number 28, if the system of inequalities y is greater than or equal to 2x plus 1 and y is greater than 1/2 x minus 1 is graphed in the xy plane above, which quadrant contains no solutions to the system? So basically what they're saying is, if you graph your system of inequalities, in which quadrant would no solutions be found? So let's graph it, or let's just do a quick sketch of it. So y is greater than or equal to 2x plus 1. How you would graph this is that you basically just think it's like it's going to be 1 here, and it's basically it's going to be a steep line like that. And the other one, and then if you want to know, now you need to know which side of the line to shade. In order to do that, the easiest way to do that is just plug in 0 for x and y to see if 0, 0 works. And if it doesn't, then you do the other side. If it does, you do this side. So in this case, 0 is not greater than or equal to 1. So that's why you know it's this side. And I'm going to draw the other one in a different color so that it's easier for you guys. Okay, yeah. So now the second equation, y is greater than 1/2 x minus 1. So that would be like right here. And I'm just drawing a rough sketch because that's all you really need, as long as you know. And now here, does 0 work? 0 is greater than -1. Yes, it is. So it's like this. So now what it's asking, now you gotta do the question. In which quadrant is there no solution? Quadrant 1, yes, we have this part. In quadrant 2, yes. Basically, if you want to know which part has a solution, it's which part the two colors overlap. Now quadrant 3, yes, the two colors overlap here. Quadrant 4, we have a little bit of blue on this side, but we have no red in quadrant 4. So we know for a fact that quadrant 4 has no solutions to the system. So the answer choice is C. Now for number 29. For polynomial px, the value of p3 is equal to -2. Which of the following must be true about px? So here, nothing about this question tells you about factors, because it's not p of 0, or like it's not p of something equals 0. So right off the bat, you can just cross out a, b, c, and you can tell from like intuition that the answer is d. But just to be sure, let's talk about the remainder theorem. Basically, the remainder theorem states that if you have a polynomial, p, let's say p of x, and you divide it by x minus k, then p of k is equal to the remainder of this equation. And that's basically what's going on here. So if you divide it by x minus k, and if we say k is 3, x minus 3, and the remainder is -2, that works, that p of 3 is equal to -2. So that's how you know D is the right answer. Now let's go to number 30. So we have this graph, it gives the equation. Which of the following is the equivalent form of the equation of the graph shown in the xy plane above, from which the coordinates of vertex A can be identified as constants in the equation? So basically, it wants an equation that's similar to this equation. However, this is the important part, from which the coordinates of vertex A are identified as constants in the equation. This basically tells us that it wants it in the vertex form. So A and B are not in vertex form, and C is also not in vertex form. So we know the answer is D. And also it fits vertex form because the vertex shown is 1, -16, and the answer is 1, -16. So that works too. So the answer choice is D. Now let's do the grid for section 4. Number 35. A dairy farmer uses a storage silo that is in the shape of a right circular cylinder above. If the volume of the silo is 72 cubic yards, what is the diameter of the base of the cylinder in yards? Here, they also gave us the height of the cylinder in 8 yards. So if you don't know, the volume of a cylinder is equal to r squared pi h. So we have h is 8, and R stands for radius, and the diameter, if you don't know this, and I hope you do know this, the diameter is 2 times the radius. So let's solve for the radius, and then we can just multiply by 2 to get the diameter. So the volume of 72, let me increase this actually. Sorry, let me just rewrite this so that I have space. V equals r squared pi h. So let's plug in what we already know. Sorry. We know 72 pi is equal to r squared pi times 8. So let's divide both sides by 8 pi. That gives us 9 equals r squared. And if you square root both sides, r equals 3. But remember, we're trying to find the diameter, which they already helpfully underlined for you. But if they don't underline it, that's when they may be trying to trick you. So you should always check for what it's asking for. So the diameter is 2 times this. So the diameter is 6. Now for number 36. H of x is equal to 1 over x minus 5 squared plus 4 times x minus 5 plus 4. So what is the value, for what value of x is the function h above undefined? Usually if you have a fraction and they say it's undefined, that means the denominator is equal to 0. So what we know right here is x minus 5 squared plus 4 times x minus 5 plus 4 equals 0. Now, one thing you guys should know is this comes up a lot in the SAT. If you see x minus 5 shows up twice here. So for now, to make the equation simple, let's substitute that for a variable. So let's let x minus 5 equals z for now. So we have z squared plus 4z plus 4 equals 0. Now this is just a polynomial, and you guys should hopefully know how to solve this if you guys took algebra. So this would be z plus 2 squared equals 0. So that means if you guys know how to solve this, this would be z equals -2 for if you want to get 0. So now we plug back in x minus 5. So x minus 5 equals -2. Now if you add 5 to each side, x equals 3, which is the right answer. So yeah, so what the big takeaway from this question is that if you have like a polynomial inside, like where you could substitute it for a variable, like if you have a recurring polynomial in the question, try substituting it for a variable to make the question easier and make your life easier. Also, on section 4, number 37 and number 38 are usually combined and like a combined question. So that's also like a pattern that you should know. So Jessica opened a bank account that earns 2% interest compounded annually. Her initial deposit was $100, and she uses the expression 100 times x to the t power to find the value of the account after t years. So we have the what t equals is the what the t represents. So what is the value of x in the expression? So if you guys don't know what this equation is that it's the equation to find the money you have after interest. It's a pretty common equation that you would probably learn later on, and it's nice that they gave it to you. So what is x? So x is the interest that she earns, and what's the interest she earns? 2%. So some people may say the value of x is 2. That's wrong because it's 2%. So you might be saying, okay, nice. The answer is 0.02. However, that implies that she's losing money every year, and she's losing a lot of money at that too. So that's not the right answer. So what the correct answer is x equals 1.02. So that shows that she's getting an increase in her money every year, but only by 2%. So that's the right answer for x. Number 38, we're almost done. Jessica's friend Tyshawn found an account that earns 2.5% interest compounded annually. Tyshawn made an initial deposit of $100 into this account at the same time Jessica made a deposit of $100 into her account. After 10 years, how much more money will Tyshawn's initial deposit have earned than Jessica's initial deposit? Round your answer to the nearest cent and ignore the dollar sign when grading your response. So basically, they want to know how much more money has Tyshawn made because he went to a good bank. So basically, the best way to do this is just find out how much money they each have. And if you want to find a difference, you can just plug in one long equation into your calculator and find this answer. So it's Tyshawn. We know Tyshawn makes more money, so we write Tyshawn's equation first. So they both have $100, and x for him it's 2.5% interest, so it's 1.025. T is equal to 10 here. So this is how much Tyshawn has now, minus how much Jessica has, which is 100 times 1.02 to 10. And if you subtract this, you get an answer of like 6.109, something like that. And it says we round to the nearest cent. So your answer is $6.11, and you just written 6.11. So I hope that gives you a taste of what the math section is like, and it helps you basically prepare for when you take your next practice test. So like I said before, we're going to have more lectures like these where I go more into depth on specific question types, and I help you do tips and tricks for those question types that come a lot in the SAT. Thank you for watching this video, and if you haven't joined our Google Classroom yet, join our Google Classroom and you'll see these notes. You'll see what I said earlier in the video as in notes form, as well as these practice problems with the answers for you to practice. Thank you, and I hope you have a nice day, and good luck getting your dream SAT score.